Went up to Minot a few years ago for a high school reunion. It's kind of fun going back to Minot, North Dakota. One of the big things they do at reunions, Judy, is they kind of take you on tours. So they drive you around. Let's go look at Central Campus. Let's go look at Magic City Campus. They'll even take you to the zoo and just different parts of Minot. There's a group of us that decide to do our own private tour. And this is at night. So we pop into somebody's car and we start driving around and checking out different things. Well, one of the things we want to do is check out Perkett, where you and I went to elementary school. On a Friday night, 9 or 10 o'clock, let's go down to Perkett. I got out of the car, went up to one of the entrances, and the door was there, and obviously it's closed, but they have a little gap between the door. And Judy, I stuck my nose in there. It smelled exactly the same as it did when we were going to school there. The smell brought back all kinds of memories. And it's kind of weird how a smell or a song can kind of bring you back in time and bring you right back to where you were. And Judy, that night, on a Friday night a couple of years ago, that smell brought me right back to when I was an 11-year-old going to Perkett.
You know what's funny? I've never been back for one reunion. I am going this year for the first time in 45 years, but I've never been back.
That's kind of weird. That's a little bit weird. Some people do that. I've been to some reunions and, we talk about people like you where, we're like, what happened to that person? And have just never seen them.
You know what else is kind of funny? I agree with you. Smell sometimes brings you back to a place. Songs, exactly like what you said. What's interesting about Perkett is that school has been completely underwater multiple times from various different floods or whatever that we had growing up.
Shocking that school has not been rebuilt just based on the floods. And again, to your point, being underwater. But one other quick story about Perkett is that when I was up at the reunion, I also went and visited a classmate's grave. One of our classmates had passed away. While I was there looking at the grave, I turned around and looked, and the headstone just on the other side of her grave was Florence Perkett's grave. Got a picture of Florence Perkett's grave that was next to one of our classmates.
Oh, that's really bizarre.
Isn't
That's
it?
weird, kind of weird. And here we are talking about Perkett Elementary. But what I remember about school in North Dakota, I have to say, it was so cold. And, this podcast happens to take place in North Dakota, and there was a lot of things that were interesting about North Dakota, mostly the things that you couldn't do in North Dakota because of, legalities and whatever. But it was cold as crap in North Dakota. The schools there never closed. It's not like today where school, hey, there's a threat of snow, school's shutting down. Ooh, boom, it's going to be a little cold. Let's shut her down. It's not like that. I mean, it was really cold all the time in the wintertime. And that school never, ever closed. I don't remember one snow day.
I don't either. I think it wasn't until we got to high school later, maybe, that they started kind of doing that a little bit. But when we were in grade school, and again, you and I walked to school every day, so it wasn't like where we got dropped off. I think every once in a while we might have a dune buggy story with our dad later and Perkett. But for the most part, you and I walked to school, and that was including in the winter when it was super cold out. And you could have a temperature below zero. You could have wind chill factors well below zero. And you and I are walking to school, never canceled. Nowadays, again, you mentioned, you get an inch of snow or the temperature gets down to 10 below and, we can't go to school. Well, we went to school every single day. And not only did we go to school, and we'll get into more of the recess kind of things in a minute, but they never canceled recess. We had to go out and play. So you had the morning recess, you had the afternoon recess, and they actually sent us out in those no matter what the weather was.
Totally. And if you lost like your mittens or your hat or whatever, it didn't matter. Get your ass outside and play. And I think they just wanted their break from the kids. But you're right. We do have some more of those stories in a second. But school never canceled. And one other thing, and I just thought of it as you were talking, I don't believe we were allowed, and I guess you could, but we weren't allowed to ride our bikes to school either. We had to walk. Couldn't ride our bikes. And I think it was because the fear of getting the bikes stolen, or maybe we weren't competent enough to lock them up. In the wintertime, it was too icy, but I don't remember ever getting to ride my bike to school, which of course would have made it even colder in the wintertime.
Well, I think that's all of the above. And you're right. In the winter, we absolutely wouldn't, 5 inches of snow, you're not riding your bike through that. But in the fall and in the spring, it seems like we certainly could have done, the bike ride to school. But again, for various reasons, we weren't allowed to. I don't know if that was an internal mom and dad thing or if that was a school thing. And again, I think it was just, again, our parents thinking that we weren't competent enough to lock up our bikes and then make sure that, we rode the bike home and got it home safely.
Yeah, because their fear was, Donnie, no matter what you were going to do, your bike was going to get stolen. And I know that did end up happening at some point, or if not multiple points in your life. But that, I think, was the reason we weren't allowed. The school did have bike wrecks.
So one thing I wanted to talk about, Judy, was my first day of school. And again, our dad's a cop, mom's a German immigrant, not really maybe knowing the ways of how things are in the U.S. and what things look like. And we'll get into some more of that coming up in a little bit in this podcast. However, the first day of school, mom dresses me up like a little man, like I'm wearing a 3-piece suit. I've got a suit. I've got a tie. I've got a vest. I've got nice slacks on. I've got shoes on. I'm dressed, Judy, I look like JFK Jr. First day of school, I'm dressed up like I'm going to Harvard and we're going to Perkett Elementary. Well, everybody else wearing T-shirts, maybe a few people dressed up a little bit thinking that, okay, got a button-down shirt on or, nice pair of pants or whatever, tennis shoes and that type of thing. Not Donnie. I'm showing up first day of school like I'm going to business school. And that didn't play well in school. In Minot, North Dakota at Perkett Elementary, I got the first day of school picked on. And what happened later in the day is I'm getting ready to go home. Somebody actually took a piece of gum that they had in their mouth and they put it on my suit, like right on my suit. Just put a piece of gum right there. And Judy, what did I do? Well, I started crying. I'm a first grader. I left it there and I run all the way home. Our mom's waiting for us and I get all the way home and my mom's like, what's going on? Why are you crying? Donnie, why are you crying? I'm like, somebody bullied me. I got gum. I got gum on my suit. And mom leans over and goes, bloop, and just flicks it right off. And I kind of thought, I guess I could have flicked it right off as well. Maybe I was already being a little drama queen in first grade, leaving the gum on just so I could get home and show it to mom. That was my indoctrination into public schools in Minot, North Dakota.
I have to ask, and I know you blame our mom as the one who dressed you up like the little man, but I also remember you wearing a little man outfit at Christmas one year. So are you going to say that was her fault too, or was that you?
Well, that was all her. You think I went around and picked out and had a closet and said, oh, let me wear this suit. Or let me wear that suit. Yeah. I think that's all that was in my closet.
I think you had a fedora when you went to school too. I think you had a little hat on, but maybe it was that time or another time, but didn't our mom slap that kid, wait and slap him, or was that another kid?
That was one of our neighbor kids that got slapped for, well, we'll get into that in a future podcast. So, again, things happen and our mom gets involved. And she didn't slap this kid. In fact, I don't even know if that kid was ever confronted. But lesson learned, day 2 of school, I wore regular clothes.
I think there was something else, too, with that kid that I don't know if our folks called that kid's parents. Something happened because the mom of that kid that put the gum on you said, if you wouldn't dress your kid like a little man, and made some comment. So there was some confrontation with the parents. So I'm not quite sure. Listen, nobody's calling you little man now, but it was little man then.
One other quick story about, again, getting bullied at Perkett. There was another time where I had those big snow boots, and they were probably about, 12 inches high, and you put them on. I think, you actually just, take your shoes off and you put these big snow boots on. Well, on the way home from school, I got bullied. I got picked on, and somebody took my snow boots and packed them full of snow. Packed them all the way full of snow. So what did I do? Yeah, I ran home crying, carrying the snow boots. Well, I left the snow boots in the garage. I didn't. Did Donnie empty the snow out? No, Donnie left the snow in. Well, what this meant was later I went out to check on, the snow boots, or maybe it was the next morning to put on the snow boots. Well, now all the snow had melted and they were completely full of water. I had a foot of water in my snow boots because somebody had packed them full of snow, bullying me, and I didn't have the foresight to empty it out. So I just kind of left it that way. And then the next day, obviously trying to get to school, I didn't have snow boots because mine were sitting in the garage all full of water.
Good thing those galoshes could hold water, right? Because otherwise we would have had ice all over,
Oh, yeah. They were watertight. They were actually really good boots. In fact, I wouldn't mind having a pair of those boots today because Nothing got out of those.
Our Perkett Elementary had this courtyard, and this is kind of one of those recesses, but we would play games. You'd get picked for games or whatever. Pom Pom, I think, was a game. I don't really quite remember what that game was, except I think it involved charging at each other or whatever. I don't know, but it was a courtyard, so it was a little contained area. And in one of these frozen winters, right, where we had to go outside and play, we had to play dodgeball, right? And I don't mean to say we had to play dodgeball, and I know in some states it's called suicide ball. Well, it could have been called that in North Dakota too, because you're like whipping this like gold ball, which is now frozen, right? So it's like a weapon. And you're like whipping that at people and like, oh, I mean, why is Susie bleeding over there? It's because we're playing frozen dodgeball in North Dakota. It was just crazy again that we had to go outside and, again, dodgeball was a little dangerous at that time.
Hey, if you were a nice dodgeball player, you were throwing at people's legs, their feet, the lower half of their body. But some of the kids, again, we'll go back to the kind of the bullying aspect of it. Some of the kids in our grade school were not necessarily super nice and maybe even a little bit bigger. And when they got a hold of that dodgeball and they saw you on the other side of that courtyard and are, eyeballing you and getting ready to drill you, you better be nimble. You better be ready to dive. You better be ready to jump because they're going to go after you and throw that thing. And you're absolutely right. In the middle of the winter, that thing hurt. That thing could maim you. And again, how'd you get your black eye, Johnny? It's like, well, dodgeball at recess.
Yeah.
But Judy, sticking with recess and again, getting back to the cold weather of North Dakota. And again, we went to school. They never canceled school. 20, 30 below, wind chill factor. We're walking to school. I think I can count on one hand how many days our dad actually drove us to school. And that might have actually been during nice weather because we drove the dune buggy. He drove us in a dune buggy. But anyway, back to the recess. They would send us out. They'd never cancel recess. So they would send us out. There'd be a big snowstorm. We'd have like 15, 16 inches of snow. And the next day we'd be in school. And then the teachers at 10:15 would be, all right, class, recess, everybody get outside. And even if you didn't want to go outside, they forced you to go outside. So you had to put on, like you said, hopefully you found your mittens or you brought your mittens to school and your hat, your stocking hat and your coat. And you go outside and you play and you have fun and this, but you're freezing. And now all of a sudden, okay, we're outside, we're playing. It's 15 inches of snow. What can you do? Let's make snowmen. Let's play in the snow. Let's build snow forts. Well, the problem with that is when recess was over, we came inside and the teacher got pissed off because our pants were completely just full of snow in the creases and half wet and just caked. Remember the old days of, when you're out rolling around in the snow and your pants are just full of snow and the creases and all this. And the teachers got pissed off and they don't want to send you home in wet clothes or clothes full of snow. Now they're at fault because they're the ones that made us go outside and play in this, which is what we did. We played. Well, their solution to this, Judy, I've told this story to a few people and nobody ever believes it.
Yeah.
But what they did at our grade school, when you came in and your pants were soaking wet and caked in snow, they made you wear a paper skirt. A paper skirt. And what they did was those big art rolls.
They'd
those
roll
big
them
rolls
in
of
over.
paper.
Yeah, you knew you were in trouble when they were rolling
Yeah,
it
with
over.
art. Yeah,
Yep.
they bring it over and it'd be like 5, 6 different colors. Well, they didn't use all the colors. They just gave you the white one.
Yep.
So you just got the white roll. They'd unroll it. They'd make a paper skirt. I don't remember if they taped it on you or pinned it on you or whatever it
Stapled.
was, but stapled it on you. You're right. They stapled it on you. And then they took your pants and brought them over by the heaters. And, hopefully by the end of the school day, those would be dry. But for the next couple of hours, you're walking around class. And it wasn't just me or you or, a couple of us. There'd be like 7, 8 of us. And it was usually the guys, 7, 8 of us that are walking around in paper skirts. And very weird, very uncomfortable, and super weird if you had to go to the bathroom.
I had a paper skirt too. There was multiple times because it was not uncommon to get soaking wet outside and have all that snow stuck to you, which is actually a great little reminder. Hey, if any of you guys have any pictures or anything that you want to share with us, please send them to us at hello@storiesfromthemiddleofnowhere.com and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We'll be happy to put some of those pictures up. They don't have to be about paper skirts. They don't have to be anything about North Dakota, but if you had kind of silly things that you did, at recess or whatever, anything that's kind of a representation of that time, please feel free to send us those things.
Well, I think the paper skirt thing too was exclusive to Perkett because I've talked to other people from Minot that went to other grade schools, and I have said, "Hey, did you guys have to do this?" And they're like, "No."
Yeah.
And I was even telling somebody about it a year ago, and they were like, "No way, no way."
Y-
And I go, "Yeah, no, we had to wear paper skirts." And they're like, "No, you didn't." I'm like, "Yeah, we did." And so then actually, I think you and I had a conversation subsequent to that where I said, "Do you remember wearing paper skirts at Perkett?" And you're like, "Absolutely." And I'm like, "Okay, not out of my mind. That actually did happen."
Yeah, that's true. And I've talked to people who also grew up in other states where it was cold as, not quite as cold as North Dakota, but they thought the same thing. Okay, wackadoo, with the whole paper skirt thing. But you knew you were in trouble when they started rolling out the big thing of the paper. It's like you're wrapped up like meat in a butcher shop.
Well, and what was really wacky, Judy, I don't know if you remember this, but the second recess we had in the afternoon where they sent us outside in the paper skirts.
Yeah.
I'm
No.
kidding. They didn't
I'm
do
like, "I
that.
don't remember that." I'm like, well, I don't yeah, okay,
And then we
nut
came
job.
in naked.
Yeah.
The skirts fell off outside, then we just came in, we had no pants on.
Yeah, no, it's not true. Liar.
I
So,
know, I made that up.
um, but one thing is we used to have this little, announcement with the principal would come on the little PA speaker, and you would think that it had to do with it's cold outside, it's recess or whatever, but he would come on and he'd have this announcement of cold, cold, cold. And you're thinking, it's cold. It's going to be about that. That was actually a drill for we were under attack by nuclear weapons. And it must have been for the Cold War or something. Maybe that's what it stood for. But like it's going to help for us to, roll up in the fetal position and hide our head under one of those stupid little desks. So anyway, that was just another little strange thing. And that was at Perkett. But I know also in junior high, we used to watch all these horrible videos of all of that stuff. It scared the bejesus out of you.
Well, I have talked to my kids about the bomb drills that we
Yeah.
did in elementary school, and they can't believe it. Again,
Yeah.
almost kind of an unbelievable thing that in the time that we grew up, late 60s, early 70s, you're right, Cold War still going on, and we actually had bomb drills where we would practice what we would do in case we were under attack. And North Dakota was kind of a unique state in that we had a lot of military stuff going on up in North Dakota, the missile silos, Minot Air Force Base, Grand Forks Air Force Base. I think I heard at one point in time that if Minot, or if not Minot, but if North Dakota had become its own country, that it would have been the third most powerful country in the world. That's how much stuff we had up there. So again, bomb drills, all
Yeah.
that was real. And Judy, when you're 10, 11 years old and you're hiding under your desk because there could be a nuclear bomb, that's scary, weird, freaky stuff to be dealing with as a kid. And again, with my kids, who are all grown now, but with my kids, if I would have ever have had to had that kind of discussion with them, or, they had to go through that in grade school, I would have been freaked out. And they would have been freaked out. They would have been like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on, Dad?"
Yeah, yeah, and it was real, and even the high school, and I know we're talking about our grade school, but our high school had a state-of-the-art bomb shelter for, like, a nuclear bomb. It had, like, a whole underground indoor track. It had all kinds of kinda strange stuff, but it was a very real thing. The movies, all of that stuff, haunting, and especially as a kid, it left an impression.
The high school had a great bomb shelter. We were all going to potentially maybe be safe in that. In grade school, it was just hide under your little flip top desk. Nobody was going to survive that.
Well, wait,
Judy,
wait, wait, I gotta tell you that bomb shelter at we would have been safe there, but it stunk. It stunk, like, from the wrestling mats. It was the wrestlers were down there all the time, and it was totally stinky. Alright, sorry.
sweaty, dark, and dingy in the bomb shelter. Yeah,
But
it
we had
reeked.
people from other countries come check out the schools because it was all state-of-the-art stuff.
Back in the day, it was totally state of the art.
Mhm.
I do want to segue into show and tell.
Okay. Well, we had this really mean secretary. I'm not gonna say her name, but, to protect her because she was, like, mean, and I don't know what it was at the time and if it was like this in everybody else's schools, but at our school, our secretary was also the disciplinarian. She would slap you, she would spank you, things you could not do to this day. She was hateful, mean, at least in our minds, and maybe because we were always in trouble, that we had that impression. And I mean, I was always in trouble. I was always in the office writing 100 times, I will not do this. I won't swear. I won't do all these things. But she was a mean, nasty lady. I mean, she was. So anyway, it's show and tell. We got a new dog, Snoopy, our little poodle, who's a grouchy little dog. But anyway, I bring him to school. I'm all excited. I think Snoopy almost ripped your toe off one time. But anyway, I bring Snoopy to school for show and tell. And on cue, I could not have paid. And everybody's like drooling over Snoopy, thinking Snoopy's the coolest thing because not everybody had dogs then. But Snoopy, on the way out, stopped up by the office, totally pees on Mrs. What's her name's almost said her name, pees on her door, all over the door. And like he had been holding it all day long just to do that for me. So that was my little show and tell surprise for that mean old secretary.
Snoopy knew that she was a mean old lady and just said, I'm going to whiz right on her door.
Whiz-o-matic. Yeah, totally.
And you're right, Snoopy was kind of a mean dog. One of the things he did always was that if you stepped on his toy, he didn't like that. I would be walking through our house and accidentally step on one of his toys, and he would come flying out of the other room and attack my foot, to the point where he would rip my sock off my foot, and I had to dive onto bed. But Snoopy was a good dog. We had him for like 15 years, lived a long time, and peeing on the secretary's door at Perkett was kind of a little poetic justice for that mean lady.
One more little story about that mean old lady, because I was in trouble a lot. And surprising, shocker, but I was in trouble all the time. And I remember one time I had to go home and get our mom's sign off on something. And this is where some of the nonsense for me that carried into later years began in high school or whatever. But I got in trouble and I needed our mom's signature, and she didn't write any English. And I'm like, and this will be the first time that anybody ever sees her signature. So I don't know if I'm like in fourth grade and I'm like forging her signature already on a note that I had to have signed off that that she acknowledged that I got in trouble for something and, had to stay after school.
Wow. I had the same thing where we're going on a field trip. I had forgot to take home the permission slip the day before to go on the field trip. Well, if you don't have that signed, guess what? You're staying at school. Everybody's going on the field trip. I run home before school starts, and I'm basically have a blank piece of paper, and I'm trying to fool our mom, which she was easily foolable on a lot of things, but certain things she would bust you about. And this was one of those things where I just said to Mom, hey, will you sign this? And she's like, what's that for? And I go, oh, it's so we can do something at school and, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that got back to Dad, and Dad actually came down to the school. And that's how weird this got, where he came down to the school and said, would you have Mom sign? And I was like, well, just a little permit, so that got a little bit weird.
And our mom was the mom that would never let anything slide, where sometimes you hear or you watch a show on TV where you're like, one parent doesn't tell the other parent something they kind of cover for you. Yeah, that never happened in our house. Never.
Well, a lot of parents do the good cop, bad cop thing in parenting. Not our parents. We had bad cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
And, they both, kind of just beat up on you, and you didn't get the flip side of that. So you're absolutely right.
Right. One detective, two detective.
Judy, we're going to have a sports podcast at some point coming up where we talk about all kinds of sports. You and I involved in sports, playing in sports. But I got to real quick tell you, the sports thing starts at Perkett Elementary, because in 5th and 6th grade, they introduce you to sports. So we're going to play basketball. I'm going to play basketball at Perkett Panthers, and tried out for the basketball team. Made the starting 5 at Perkett, which, woohoo, that's a big accomplishment in grade school. Not. But anyway, I'm on the starting 5, going to my first game at Perkett. The first year we're playing, I think all our home games, or all of our games, were at Perkett. Or maybe it was 5th grade, all of our games were at Lincoln. Then at 6th grade, all of our games were at Perkett. Anyway, Mom and Dad are going to come to one of my games. And again, our dad, being a cop, obviously he's cool. He knows what's going on. He played basketball in high school. Our mom, no knowledge of American sports. Might have a little bit of knowledge about soccer, football, baseball, basketball, absolutely zero knowledge. And again, our mom, and you have to know our mom to kind of visualize this, but our mom wearing a mink coat, made up, hair up into the beehive, diamond rings, all made up. shows up at my basketball game, walks into the gym, and basically everybody stops what they're doing to look and see and wonder, what the heck is it? Who is this person rolling in? Is this the Queen of England? Is this, is this
Well, she
somebody?
did look like a movie star. She looked kind of like Sophia Loren, right? So she did kind of have that going for her. She was really, really nice looking.
Well, to go to a basketball game, a
I
grade
know.
school basketball game, a little bit overdone. Well, that's not the topper. The topper is Judy. She starts cheering for the wrong team. So the other team scores a basket and my mom starts cheering. And I look over because I can hear her cheering for the other team. I'm like, wait a minute, they just scored. Why is my mom over there cheering? And my dad had to tell her, Donnie is on this team wearing the blue jerseys. And when they score, put a basket in, that's when you cheer. So the memory of when sports all kind of started back in grade school was me playing basketball at Perkett, 5th and 6th grade, mom and dad being supportive, showing up at the games. But again, mom looking like Sophia Loren, all made up, full makeup, diamonds, mink coats, cheering for Bel Air.
Weren't we the Panthers?